it's time for the Q&A again. But first, I'm very excited to announce a project that I've been working on. I have been teaching propagation at the nursery to small groups for a number of years now, and we thought it would be a good idea if we made it into an online course so that anyone, anywhere in the world can access it. If you are interested in propagating herbaceous perennials to a professional standard, then please do follow the link below for more information. Now on with the Q&A. Right, let's have a look. Hi Rosie, I've tried to grow straw flowers again this year with no success after following the packet instructions. Have you any tips? Thank you. Right, so the straw flowers are these ones that you see that look as though they're completely dry from the beginning, and they are Xerochryson bracteatum. They are a really lovely plant. Most of them are from Australia. They are very much a xera type plant. That means that they want really free drainage, really good drainage, full sun, and that's where they want to go. So if you've got a much damper soil or you've got a rich, proper garden soil, they don't really like that. Also, they want to be on the neutral to the acid side. So if you have an alkaline soil, again, they're not going to be very happy. So these are things that you've really got to understand. So it is key for them to grow properly, for them to be in the correct soil. So that is very sharp drainage, full sun, and something that is neutral to acidic. So little watering is required for them, and then they should succeed. Otherwise, if you're having problems with them, try calendula. Very, very similar flowering types and colours within those ranges. Hi Rosie, my Acer Bloodgood, vibrant red coloured leaves, has lately been turning green. It's on my balcony, which heads west, and therefore provides a lot of afternoon light and sun. Does it have something to do with the pH level of the soil, or could it be caused by too much sun exposure? Okay, so with Acer Bloodgood, it's a palmatum type, and it actually prefers to be in semi-shade. It also prefers to be on the neutral to slightly acidic. So this may be part of your problem. One, have you got it potted up in ericaceous compost? That will make a huge difference. So change the soil if it isn't. The other thing is, if it's getting an awful lot of sun in the evening, then again that can be causing it problems. Can you by any chance put a netting up, say a green netting, just so that it gets a little bit more shade, so that other plants that want that sun are able to have it? That will really be my suggestion to that. Occasionally you can get the odd limb that is completely green, which means that they are reverting back, but they shouldn't do. If that is happening, you can cut those limbs off or those small branches off, and then it will return back to being the beautiful dark red leaves that you want it to have. Hi Rosie, I have a small patch of full sun soil which I've added 50% grit, thinking this might be good for alpine plants. Does this differ from a gravel garden, or is the gravel just about put on the top? Is the 50-50 split what I should be aiming for, when it says it needs good drainage? Thank you. Okay, so there are lots of differing ideas as to what a gravel garden is. Some people want it to be completely 50-50, or they put a sand garden underneath and then they cover with the gravel. And a lot of times the gravel that is on the top of a gravel garden is basically a mulch, but it's not just a thin layer. It is usually at least 5 to 7 millimeters, 5 to 7 centimeters, somewhere around about 2 inches of gravel, and that creates a wonderful top dressing for the area. And the main thing that people have underneath there is very poor soils, very dry soils. So the gravel on top is helping keep a moisture level there. Therefore, plants grow away quite nicely. If you're wanting to do the alpines, then definitely a 50-50. That is the best thing that you should be doing. That gives you good, sharp drainage, and that is what the alpines like. Hello Rosie, do you have to take steps against mice all year round on the nursery? Many thanks. The main time of year that we have problems with the mice is very definitely through the winter months. That's because they're trying to find somewhere a little bit warmer, so they come into the polytunnels, and then of course we've got seed trays, we've got young bulbs, and they find those lovely to munch on and chew. So it's really the winter months that we have to worry about the mice. This time of year, through the summer and into the autumn, no, we don't have to worry too much until we get the harvest in the fields next door, and then we start to get an influx because they're out in those fields at the moment. Once the harvest is gone, their free food is gone, so they think, right, where's the next place to go? And they come onto the nursery. So we're starting to watch out somewhere around about August, September, just to see if there's any problem with plants that we're wanting to collect seed from. And then after that, then we really have to keep an eye out, and we have to, I'm afraid, put traps down. We do have a cat, although she's not very good at catching a lot. I think we might need to get some new ones. Hi Rosie, I've noticed a lot of black fly in the garden this spring, and for the first time it's a problem on my 15-year-old hibiscus. I'm in Hampshire, UK. Can you suggest anything with this? So there is a lot of black fly around, absolutely. In fact, there's a lot of insects around, and that is due to the fact that we've had such a wet but mild winter, and they have been able to keep breeding right the way through. So there are a lot of them around. If you don't want to be using anything in the way of an insecticide, then one very good way of getting rid of them is a high pressure hose. And if you high pressure hose over the plant, you will find that you'll get a lot of them falling down onto the ground. Then hopefully the birds will then get them, and maybe the ants and other things. So that is one way of doing it, and I would suggest doing that first before you start trying to use any chemicals. Hi Rosie, I have a group of 10 alliums. For the last 2 years, throw up flower shoots about 6 foot tall. You can see the flower head developing and swelling, yet they don't break open and flower. Why is this? Is it a bulb issue? Okay, so there are some ornamental alliums which don't actually give you that huge big globe head. They are grown for what looks like the actual flower spike. So if you think about when a leek comes into flower and it puts on that top flower head, which is a little bit like a, what am I trying to say? It's a little bit like an old nightcap hat, you know, the ones that you see in the old films, the men wearing these nightcaps. It's that sort of shape. So it starts off at the bottom and goes up in a long triangular shape, and what you basically end up with is these plants are not designed to flower really. They are designed to be ornamental buds, and that I think is what you've got. So if you're wanting them to open up and be the big globe ones, then you probably need to find a different variety of allium bulb. Hi Rosie, my peonies are 15 years old, haven't bloomed for 2 years, don't know why, never lifted or split them. Other plants around them are thriving. Okay, so this sounds like a problem of the fact that the plants have been in the ground for so long that they have utilised all of the nutrients that are good for them from the patch that is around them, and therefore they are probably a little bit lacking in, say, the potassium and that type of nutrient. So there are 2 things you can do. You can either leave them exactly where they are and then give them a liquid feed. I would suggest something like a tomato feed or a seaweed food, something like Maxi Crop. And then what will happen then is that they will absorb that, and hopefully next year they will flower. The other thing is to give them a little bit of a shock, and that is lift the whole clump up. You can divide as well at the same time if you want to, and you can do that now because even though they haven't flowered, they would just be finishing flowering. So this is the time you could do it. Lift the whole clump up, just dig over the ground underneath, throw a load more garden compost and food in there and replant them back there. They've just basically used up all of the nutrients that they want and they can't find any other. So help them, feed them. That's the best thing to do. Hello Rosie, I have 3 Amelanchier ovals planted in big pots. They bloomed and fruited well, but now one has a lot of yellow flowers with black sprouts. I picked them up, but others changed also. What is the problem? What should I do? Thank you. This sounds like stress to me. When plants are in a big container like that, you need to be aware of whether they are being overwatered or underwatered. And then if they are having either overwatering or underwatering, the plants then go into stress, and they will show stress by losing foliage, getting disease and that sort of thing. So firstly, check that they are not overwatered, so in which case it's a matter of putting your hand down into the soil, see how damp it is. If the pots are light enough or small enough that you can tip them and see whether or not they're okay. Make sure there is good drainage at the bottom of the holes, the bottom of the pots as well, and that they're standing on something that they can drain. They're not standing on a flat surface. So on gravel or on those little feet that you can put pots on will also help. Drainage is key. And then the other thing I would say is perhaps they need a little bit of food. They may have used up all of the feed that is in the compost that you have actually planted them into. All right, so hopefully that will help you. I have read on several occasions that it's useful to loosen the roots on new plants when planting out from pots. But whenever I see top gardeners on TV planting out, they seem to just bung the plants in straight out of the pot and without so much as touching the roots. Do you have any thoughts or insight in this? Okay, so TV gardening, they're not always doing the correct methods, maybe. But also sometimes if the plants are really quite fresh and they haven't got a huge amount of root in there, there is no point in teasing out the roots. When they have a little bit more root in them, then by all means, just literally, you don't have to do a lot. You just squeeze them and pull, and just creating a little bit of, a splitting of the actual root ball. That is all you need to do. So yes and no, they are doing it probably quite quickly so that they can get the filming done is another thing. I know it's not an excuse, but sometimes no, you do not need to do it. As I say, especially with things like bedding plants, etc., which should be fresh, they will have good young growth. You can just literally put them in, no problem at all. Perennials always produce a lot more roots, so yes, you would probably need to just pull out the bottom, and you can either do it by just squeezing and pulling, or you can just turn it on its side and pull a few bits out. That's all you need to do. So that is really best practice, is to pull the root out a little bit. Hi Rosie, I hear the term grit used in UK-based gardening videos, but I'm not quite sure what it is and how it differs from sand. I'm based in south of Seattle with a similar climate to yours. Many thanks. Okay, so when we talk about grit over here in the UK, we are talking about the grade and the size of the actual stone that you are using. So horticultural grit over here is something that is around about 4 to 5 millimeters in width. It is not a sand, so it's not a small granule. It is very much a small stone. So that is what we're talking about when we're talking about horticultural grit. And it is either mixed in with compost to give you a bit more free draining, or when you are seed sowing, it is used to cover seeds, to weigh soft seeds that will blow away. It covers them over and holds them down on the seed compost. I hope that helps you. I have a serious problem with rabbits. Can you recommend some plants that are rabbit proof? I could get a cat, will it help? Okay, so yes, definitely a cat will help. And although there are loads and loads of books and leaflets out there saying that, this plant is rabbit proof, that plant is rabbit proof, do you know what? Rabbits will eat virtually anything once. So they will go, especially if there is an explosion in rabbit population, and that's something that is happening here at the moment, and they all need to eat, so therefore they go a little bit further and they eat all sorts of things. So really the best way is to deter them. Yes, a cat is good, fencing is good, and if you've got some really precious plants which you don't want to be nibbled by them, then get your empty hanging baskets, turn them upside down, peg them over the top of your plants, and that will stop the rabbits from getting those plants when they are young. Once the plants are bigger and older, you can remove the basket, or if they've grown enough over the top, you won't notice the basket anyway. Use black or green hanging baskets for that, and it's an amazing way of keeping your plants from being eaten, and it's a very good way of stopping cats from eating Nepeta. Right, hi Rosie, I grow perennials from seed. Is it best to grow on in a seed bed for a couple of years to bulk up, or put straight out in the garden? Thank you. Okay, so a seed bed is great for plants. I wouldn't say you need to grow them on for 2 years, maybe 1 season, but if you are using in a seed bed, you will need to thin out, because if you've broadcast your seed, you will get a lot coming through. Do thin out and keep the healthiest, discard the others. I know this is a very difficult thing for people to do when they're gardening. They want to keep all their little babies, but it is far better for the plants if you thin it out and you allow the others to grow. Once they've grown for 1 season, they'll be really healthy, really good, and they only really need to be, if you're sowing them in the spring and they grow all the way through the summer, you should have good plants to be able to lift out of that seed bed and put into the ground for autumn planting, and that is the best way to do it. Hi Rosie, we have a salix, a decorative shrub, lollipop shape, planted right at our front entrance door, like many other homes. Should I be worried about the roots? Okay, so these decorative sort of lollipop salix that are sold to people tend to be dwarf, and they tend to be on dwarfing rootstock, so therefore they do not produce as much root as other willows do. So from that point of view, I wouldn't be too worried. But if you are really concerned and you don't like the idea of it being in the ground next to your house, then they grow in containers perfectly well. But do remember, salix like wet. So when you have them in a container, make sure that they are watered and fed properly. Struggling with golden mock orange or Rheus in zone 3. It's very spindly this year after a hard pruning this spring, as it's been prone to leaf spot. But I think I did it wrong. Wrong time of year, took out wrong growth. Instead, should I remove all the old growth after it blooms? It will never get very large here anyway. Okay, so the golden mock orange in conditions where it's not optimum is always going to struggle. You will always get some leaf spots on it. So my suggestion there is do make sure that you keep it well fed. You might even need to foliar feed it. The best answer to your pruning is it's third, third, third. Take out a third to nearly all of the old wood, cut down some by a third, and leave a third just growing there. That way you get new growth coming through, you get a middle bit, and you get your top bits, which are then going to be your flowering pieces. If you want to keep it in a good shape, then you can make everything all round a little bit later. But pruning after flowering is good. Taking the old dead wood out should really be done in the spring as they're starting to grow, to encourage new growth to come through. I hope that helps you. Hi Rosie, I went away for 4 days and came back to find my Arridra and Carvinskianus had shriveled and died. What might have caused it to die this quickly? It is in a container and the compost was kept slightly moist. I have problem with spider mites in my garden, yet all other plants are okay except for the Arridra. Now this sounds quite strange, and it was in the container. The only thing I can think of is maybe there is something in the container eating the roots, because that would be the only way that it would be stopping from actually growing, because they are usually pretty tough. They don't want to be too wet, but you say it's only slightly moist, so I don't think it kind of got overwatered in that time, but that is a possibility as well. So check when you tip it out of the container whether the compost is really wet. If it is, then that's the problem. If it isn't, just see how much root there is there. You could easily have there are many little bugs that will go in and eat the roots, so that could be the problem. My honeysuckle has got powdery mildew and lost a lot of leaves. It now looks very bare and straggly. Should I cut it back now? If so, how and how much, or should I wait? Now, this year has been particularly bad for mildew on honeysuckles, and a lot of them are not looking very good. If they're slightly more south or west facing, then they seem to be better than those that are in the slightly shadier positions. I would suggest cutting it back because there's no point in leaving a bare stems there. Cut it back, let it regrow, feed it with an organic, something like Maxi Crop, a seaweed fertilizer, that will get it going. And then also I would recommend using some SB Invigorator. That will help against mildew, and you need to be starting to use that in the spring when they start to leaf up. But as you're going to be cutting it back now, and as soon as you see new growth coming through, start applying a little bit of SB Invigorator. Please read the instructions. Do not overdose. If you overdose, you cause just as much problems because it will defoliate. So err on the side of caution, but use a little bit of SB Invigorator, give it a feed, give it a cut back. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch another video of mine, YouTube thinks this one is perfect for you.